Power struggles and violence are two pretty common features of history, if not two of its few constants. The winter of 1925 is no different. As world leaders struggle to consolidate their powers, Chicago gangsters and fanatical Nazis battle to come out on top, not with each other. Shootouts in flower shops, cars raked with bullets, and gunshots in Viennese offices. This winter is hunting season. I'm Knuckles Neidell. You know, Houston, West Side, Memorial Boys, you heard of us. Anyway, this is Between Two Wars Season 2, chronological summary of the interwar years, where we cover the zeitgeist, culture, technology, the art, the sports, much more. In the era when, for better or for worse, humanity ushered in modern times. Power games are played throughout the world this season. Benito Mussolini is continually extending his powers to make Italy a one-party dictatorship. Bolshevik leaders are battling over who will succeed late leader Vladimir Lenin, and Chinese nationalists are searching for someone to fill the vacuum left by the death of their leader Sun Yat-sen. There have also been power games in South America, with a military coup in Chile unseating a government installed by another military coup not long ago. Things do seem to be improving with Germany as we go into Europe, though. The Council of the League of Nations has even expressed the hope that Germany will apply for membership soon. There are also power struggles in America, not between politicians or militaries, but gangsters. Mob violence in Chicago has been on the up and up recently. You'll remember from the Summer of Sin in 1922 that Johnny Torrio had just started building his bootlegging empire and that his young protege Al Capone was rising to become his right-hand man. Well, they've only become further entrenched in Chicago. They've lost their friendly and corrupt mayor, Big Bill Thompson, though. William Dever replaced him in April 1923, and he's been cracking down on bootleggers ever since. Torrio and Capone still have the city's police, judges, and other politicians in their pockets, but they've decided that it would be safer to physically move out of Chicago proper and into the suburban town of Cicero, setting up shop in the Hawthorne Hotel. That is still their base now in the winter of 1925. When Cicero's municipal elections came in April last year, they made sure they didn't lose another friendly mayor. Frank Capone, Al's brother, made sure their men did good work in the community and supported civic projects in the run-up to voting day, and then brought out the iron fist on voting day itself. Election workers and Democratic campaigners, Capone's friendly mayor is a Republican, were beaten and even kidnapped, driven away to basements where they were held until polling closed. Armed mobsters stood at the polling booths to check the ballots before they were submitted, turning away or slugging anyone who refused to change their vote. The Democratic challenger for city clerk was apparently pistol whipped in front of his wife and kids. The open lawlessness in Cicero was so bad that a county judge deputized law enforcement agents from Chicago. They drove into Cicero in a fleet of black sedans, and gun battles broke out across the area. Frank Capone was killed in one of them, apparently left with so many bullet holes that the deputies couldn't determine who could claim the honor of killing him. Several other mobsters and 2 civilians were also killed in the day's violence. It was a steep price to pay, but the Republicans won, giving Torrio and Al full control of Cicero. Meanwhile, Chicago's gangs have been increasingly at each other's throats. As you'll remember, Torrio had pulled together all of the major ones into a cartel early in the Prohibition era. But the cracks are already starting to show when a smuggling convoy was ambushed in the summer of 1922, leading to a 20-man gun battle that we saw. Things really kicked off at the beginning of last year. Dean O'Banion was the head of the predominantly Irish North Side gang, based in the northeastern part of the city and into the suburbs. Ferocious and unpredictable, O'Banion became incensed when booze from the Sicilian Jenna gang started being sold in his speakeasies. He blamed Torrio for not enforcing the cartel agreements. So, as well as ordering the hijacking of Jenna shipments, he also tried to get back at Torrio. The 2 men jointly owned the Seaben Brewery on the north side. O'Banion told Torrio that he wanted to get out of the bootlegging game and offered to sell his share of the premises. What he did not tell Torrio was that the police had already fingered the brewery and were planning a raid. So Torrio ended up being swindled of $500,000 by O'Banion and faced jail time after the place was promptly raided. Torrio wanted his revenge, as did the Jenna gang, but they were stopped by the influential Mike Merlo, head of the Unione Siciliana. The Unione was founded in the 1890s as a fraternal organization to assist new Sicilian immigrants and advance the general interests of Sicilian Americans. It's a pretty integral part of Sicilian American life, but it's also controlled by mobsters, functioning as both a gang and a mediator between other Italian outfits. O'Banion was Irish, but Merlo was on good terms with him, so he leaned on Torrio and the Jennas to keep the peace. But O'Banion was living on borrowed time. Merlo died of natural causes on November 9th. The next morning, 3 gunmen walked into O'Banion's headquarters in a flower shop and shot him dead. One of the killers was likely Frankie Yale, Torrio's most reliable torpedo. Polish-born Jaime Weiss is the new leader of the North Siders, and now, the winter of 1925, he has started going after Torrio and Capone. Still awaiting his sentencing and increasingly taking a back seat in operations, Torrio spends most of his time out of Illinois, anywhere from Arkansas to the Bahamas to Italy. That makes Capone the easier target. On January 12th, he's inside a restaurant at lunch while his car idles outside. Northsiders show up and, obviously thinking Capone is in the car, rake it with Thompson submachine gun fire. Capone is fine, but is very much shaken. Torrio is the next target. He is briefly back in Chicago at the end of the month. On the 24th, he's heading home from a shopping trip with his wife when a sedan suddenly pulls up. Weiss and several associates, including his lieutenant Bugs Moran, jump out and start shooting. The shooters make their escape, thinking the gravely wounded Torrio will die. But he doesn't. He spends about a month in hospital recovering, after which he is sentenced to 9 months in prison for his brewery conviction. Wanting to get out of the game anyway at this point, he gives the leadership of his gang completely over to Al Capone, who has just turned 26. And the young Al will lead his outfit into all-out gang warfare that will ravage Chicago and be unlike anything else seen in Prohibition America. It won't stop the money flowing, though. Just this year, Capone's outfit will make $90 million in total revenue. That's more than $1 billion 2021 dollars. Another assassination attempt has been carried out this season, this time in Vienna. On March 10th, an unemployed dental technician and Nazi Party fanatic walks into the office of writer Hugo Bettauer and shoots him 5 times at point-blank range. Bettauer is rushed to the hospital, seriously wounded. He has been in the far right's crosshairs for quite some time. Born to an Austrian Jewish family in 1872, but converting to Protestantism on his 18th birthday, he made his career as a novelist and journalist in New York, Hamburg, Berlin, and Vienna. He has written over 20 novels, the most infamous being his 1922 Die Stadt ohne Juden. By now, 1925, it has sold over 250,000 copies and even has a film adaptation. This was Bettauer's answer to the rising tide of anti-Semitism in Vienna following the Great War. It imagines a fictional Austrian chancellor declaring that Jews have dominated Austria for too long and must be expelled. After being forced to sell their homes, Austria's Jews are all deported eastward on 30 huge trains borrowed from neighboring countries. At first, the Austrians rejoice, but the economy soon takes a hit. There are no longer skilled financiers to organize the economy or wealthy industrialists to employ workers. Viennese culture also suffers. Opera houses lose their most generous patrons, and without fashionable female Jewish clients, department stores struggle to make money. They revert to selling simple garments, sausages, and beer, and Vienna becomes so uncultured that its inhabitants revert to wearing traditional Austrian dress, such as lederhosen and dirndls. Even young Austrian women find themselves sexually unsatisfied with no more Jewish lovers to please them. The book ends with the Jews being welcomed back into Vienna by Austrians who have learned from their mistake. Bettauer's book actually plays on many stereotypes leveled at Jews by anti-Semites, even falling into offensive physical descriptions of them as curved-nosed, dark-haired, and so forth. This makes it pretty controversial among both Jews and Gentiles, and the overall critical reception was mixed. But it didn't stop Bettauer getting a bestseller and being rocketed to fame. His next undertaking has been equally controversial. On Valentine's Day 1924, he published his new magazine, Er und Sie, Wochenschrift für Lebenskultur und Erotik, He and She, a magazine for lifestyle and eroticism. A magazine promoting sexology and sexual liberation. It contains medical articles, advice columns, and even a personal section. It was looking like it would be a big success. Around 60,000 copies were printed for the second issue, with a readership that was likely 3 times that. But a few weeks after it began, Bettauer was notified by the police that Er und Sie would be banned from magazine stands. Dismayed, Bettauer wrote an appeal to the mayor of Vienna, complaining that he was writing in the public good. The mayor belongs to the Social Democratic Party. So when the Christian Social Party finds out that he was in personal correspondence with a peddler of filth, a political scandal kicked off. It was apparently evidence that the Social Democrats were enabling a flood of soul-destroying pornography into Vienna. This lasted throughout the spring of 1924, and even Christian Social Chancellor Ignaz Seipel became involved. During proceedings of the Vienna City Council, Christian Social Councilman Anton Orel stood up in the council chambers and declared, "Emphatically, I can say we categorically oppose the fact that the mayor is forcing a dirty Jewish commercialist upon us who wants to soil our children with Jewish poison and Jewish swinishness." In the resulting chaos, social Christians started chants of Bettauer Party, Bettauer Party at the Social Democrats, and fistfights broke out between members. Bettauer's notoriety only increased from there. In May, he began publishing Bettauer's Wochenschrift, Probleme des Lebens, Bettauer's Weekly, Life Problems, which is more or less the same as Er und Sie, but marketed consciously to women to avoid censorship. This did not stop Bettauer from being brought to trial on pornography charges in September. He was acquitted, but this only whipped up the far right even more, and the press began calling for his lynching. And it was only a matter of time before someone answered that call. Bettauer holds office hours in which his readers can come in for personal advice on sexual pleasure and sexual health. And the morning of March 10th, 1925, is one of those allotted times. And 20-year-old Otto Rostock walks straight in. He's trained as a dental surgeon, but is currently unemployed and has been a Nazi Party member since 1920, although he resigned his membership at the end of last year to avoid implicating the Nazis in this in any way. He shoots Bettauer 5 times at point-blank range. As I said, Bettauer spends about 2 weeks fighting for his life in hospital, but eventually dies from his wounds. Rostock will be defended by a Nazi Party lawyer, who will argue that he is a patriotic young man mentally confused by Jewish smut. Rostock will be found guilty, but will also successfully plead insanity and be sentenced to a short stint in mental hospitals and released at the end of 1927. One final piece of history being made this season, though fortunately one in which no one is murdered. On March the 20th, one of the first triumphs in documentary filmmaking is released. Grass, A Nation's Battle for Life. It was created by 3 Americans, Marion C. Cooper, an Air Force officer who also flew for Poland in the Polish-Soviet War, Ernst Schurzak, a former airborne combat photographer, and Marguerite Harrison, a former spy, and the first American woman to have been a Bolshevik prisoner. All have a distinct wanderlust, and with a budget of only $10,000, they set out with the vague plan to search for some kind of forgotten people in Asia. The film captures this quest. They start by trying to film Kurdish tribes living in Turkey, but they fail to get permits to do it properly, and then make their way into the deserts and mountains to see who and what they can uncover. After filming various peoples there, they eventually settle upon documenting the members of the Bakhtiari tribes in Persia as they make their semi-annual migration for better pastures. They follow a sub-tribe of 5,000 people and 50,000 animals, making their 48-day journey from a region close to the Persian Gulf to the summer pastures near Isfahan. In a particularly spectacular sequence, the tribe needs to cross the icy Karun River. In a huge operation, the men inflate goat skins to create rafts that carry the women, children, small animals, and belongings. The men then swim across the water while also herding thousands of livestock in the river with them. In another epic shot, what looks like the whole tribe can be seen from a distance zigzagging up a mountainside as if they were a trail of ants. It is screened widely upon release this season, and reviewers are incredibly impressed, with many of them declaring it to be one of the best films of 1925. It will also earn a place in history of one of the very first real ethnographic documentary films. And with that, I end the first months of 1925. Perhaps it is the steady diet of gangster films we've all seen, but it's easy to get wrapped up in the excitement of Prohibition stories and forget that these are real people being murdered and real people having their lives ruined by lawless gangs. But this is real life. In the winter of 1925, the Chicago mob is just beginning to get a permanent place in the history books. Just like the Nazi Party, the pages will be written in blood. And if you would like to refresh yourself on why the United States entered the Prohibition era in the first place, you can check out our Season 1 episode on that right here. And remember, if you had your eye on my tie, then you can find it and own it yourself over at Indy's Tie Barn. And you can find all our other collectible items over at the Time Ghost Barracks. Links should be popping up anytime now. Our Time Ghost Army member of the week is Big Hans Pandan. We do not have the income of Al Capone's gang, or of Al Capone, so we rely on the Time Ghost Army for the majority of our funding for just about everything we do here. To see us continue making all our content and even expand on it, be like Big Hans Pandan. Join the Time Ghost Army, patreon.com or timeghost.tv. And as Tupac once said, I didn't choose the thug life. The thug life chose me. Rest in peace.